Are session games worth your time? Many players, especially those who are into online gaming, are faced with the choice of whether to continue investing hours in session-based projects like competitive shooters, MOBAs, card games, and more, or whether to switch to something more stable and in-depth. At first glance, it seems like sessionals are the perfect way to unwind after work or school, but the longer you're in the genre, the more its weaknesses begin to show. For more than a decade of actively playing various session games, from popular tactical shooters to mega-hits MOBAs, comes not only experience but also certain disappointment. And it's not just about technical problems like bugs or poor balance. Deeper lies the frustration with the very model of session games, which seems to increasingly exploit the player rather than entertain him. Time is the most important resource. Consider this. Session games take up a lot of your time. The average MOBA match lasts about 40 minutes. If you play 5 games in an evening, 3 hours have already passed. Now figure out how much content you could get in the same amount of time in other media. For example, a movie is 2 to 3 game sessions. One season of a TV series is 10 to 15 game sessions. An audiobook, 10 to 20 more. Even going through a story-driven RPG can give you a much richer and more meaningful experience. Why? Because a session game rarely offers you anything new. Most matches are the same, differing only in team composition and perhaps the map. And the emotional payoff? It's highly debatable. Too often matches are monotonous, toxic, unbalanced. Time after time you get the same experience, which doesn't get any deeper. Is there any progress? Session games often leave nothing behind. In a story game, you go through quests, develop your character, see the result of your decisions. But what about in a session game? A rating that can drop because of one bad match, a skin that doesn't change anything in the game. Progression here is an illusion. Even if you're enjoying the gameplay, you're just going in circles with each game. Yes, you can argue that in session games there is skill development, mastery. But how often do you really experience growth? Especially if you're constantly faced with matchmaking, which nullifies all your efforts by picking opponents that are too weak or too strong. At some point you realize you are not a progressive player, you're just doing the same thing. Quality of matches, a game of luck. Think about it, how many matches lately can you call really good? Without toxicity, with adequate players, fair balance, interesting moments, probably less than half of them, and yet you spend hours watching something that brings you essentially dubious pleasure. A quality match is a rarity. One player plays to win, another to be a fan, and another to just throw the game away and ruin everyone's mood. Algorithms for selecting players are not ideal, and the desire of developers to maintain a fair environment is often limited by budget and attention to cyber sports. You end up being held hostage to the system. Vulnerability to change sessions are games where you have no control over anything. Don't like the patch? It's too late. The balance has been changed, your favorite character or weapon is now useless, no way to roll back. And in some cases, the game may even be closed, leaving all your investments, from skins to time, in the void. You need to realize, you don't own the session, you rent access to it, and at any moment the landlord can say, "That's it, that's enough." Even if you bought the game, the skins, the battle passes, none of it belongs to you. Community, a force that destroys from within team-based games, suffer from one obvious affliction: toxic community. And it's not even that the players are rude. The problem is deeper, in the culture of interaction. Here, aggression, the desire to humiliate a teammate, to blame, to ridicule, becomes the norm. Sensible communication is rare. The game becomes a field for self-assertion through humiliation of others. Someone uses the game to assert himself, someone is interested in rank, someone just enjoys tearing down the rink. You end up with chaos instead of cooperation. A place where victory brings no joy and defeat causes rage and stress. To be faced with this every day is to be slowly poisoned. Rating is more than a number. In session games, a rating is more than just a number, it's a status. It's proof of your worth. But no matter how you play, you'll always find something to hang on to. A small rating means you're bad. A big rating means you've been booing. Playing tournaments? Tournaments were wrong. All of this devalues your efforts. It's like you're always taking an exam that you know you're going to fail. Think about it. What's really important to you? Before you start your next match, ask yourself, do you really want to do this? Will it bring you joy? Or are you just doing it out of habit because it's easier? Sessions can be addictive, but they often become an addiction that you don't benefit from. If you're not streaming, building a career in cybersports, or playing on a team with friends, maybe you should rethink your attitude towards the genre. Sometimes it's better to spend your time on something that will give you more emotion, meaning, development. You're trapped in the one more and sleep cycle. Perhaps one of the most insidious traits of session games is their psychological model. They're designed to bring you back again and again. You lost? Well, you've got to get back at it. You win. Great, we can't stop on that note, we'll play again. Was it a bad match? We have to end the night on a positive note. And now you're back at 4 a.m. Searching, thinking, one more and sleep. Sessions turns into an endless feed of rewards and frustrations, like TikTok for gamers. The mechanics of random rewards, ranking boosts, rare wins, changing teammates and heroes all create a powerful engagement effect. In fact, it's not the gameplay itself that keeps you hooked, but the hope that the next match will be the right one. That's the real trap. The dopamine trap. It's worth talking about brain biochemistry here as well. Session games activate the dopamine system, the same one responsible for pleasure and motivation. But instead of sustained happiness, you get pleasure shots from rare wins, loot boxes, or successful kill streaks. And between these shots, you get long lapses, frustration, anger, fatigue. It's like playing a game of chance. You spin the roulette in the hope that the jackpot will fall. But the problem is that the jackpot is just an acceptable match, not something of real value. And the longer you play, the more you find that positive emotions become increasingly rare. You have no influence on what's going on. One of the most demotivating factors is lack of control. In session games, you can be as prepared as possible, with great mechanics, knowledge of the map, meta, and timings. But all of that falls apart in 1 second when someone on your team decides to pour a flick or simply drops out of the match. You literally depend on randomness. You trust the algorithm, and often you lose not because you were weak, but because you were in a situation where others decided everything. Imagine if the book you're reading could burn out in the middle of a chapter, and you'd have to start over. This is infinity without a goal. Sessions, unlike story games, almost never have an ending. There are no credits, no ending, no epilogue, and that makes them feel like a work in progress with no end in sight. No matter how much you play, you're not getting any closer to the goal. You're just spinning in a wheel like a hamster, and with each new match, the wheel gets heavier. Games should give you a sense of completion, even if it's a small victory, a final story, a hero upgrade, a plot twist. Sessions doesn't have that, so it's not surprising that many players burn out sooner or later. They feel that it was all for nothing, even if they had fun along the way. Social aspect or social stress. One of the peculiarities of session games is that they often require teamwork, but instead of constructive cooperation, you get stressful socialization. When a person doesn't roll out, they're not supported, they're destroyed. When you're wrong yourself, there's little chance of understanding either. Communication more often looks like an exchange of grievances than an attempt to improve team play. The community itself often cultivates a vicious cult of toxicity. People take pride in trashing a teammate, making fun of someone else's mistake, or even ruining a game out of principle. It's not just annoying, it's destructive. You're in a game where everyone is an enemy by default, even your own. The punishment system doesn't work. One would hope that the system of bans, mutts, and reports would solve the problem, but in reality it is either powerless or indifferent. A report on a ruiner? He might just get a warning, or maybe nothing. He'll create a new account and come back. Mud on the toxic. Fine, but you're still on the team with him. Developers often rely on automated algorithms, but these algorithms will never replace adequate human moderation. The result is a vicious circle. Players get angry because they are not protected, they become toxic, the system does not punish them, and everything repeats. How to get out? What should you do if you suddenly realize you're stuck in a session? It all depends on you. The main thing is to answer a few questions honestly. Do I really enjoy this game? Does it give me something valuable? Emotions, communication, skills? Do I want to do it for another year, 5 years, 10? If you answered no to even one question, it might be time to look for an alternative. It doesn't necessarily mean giving up sessioning altogether, but it might mean it's time to change your priorities. For example, play with friends and only for the sake of fan fiction, or choose a single-player game to get a feel for the story and the world, rather than just filling the evening with clicks. Personal choice. It's important to realize no one decides for you what to play. It's your leisure time, and your emotions. But if you play not because you want to, but because you can't stop, then it's time to change something. Sessions are not evil, but like anything that gives you a quick dopamine boost, they require awareness. If you want to play, play. But do it knowing what you're getting into, and if one day you realize that the game no longer brings you joy, know that it is possible to get out of this circle. The main thing is not to be afraid to try something new. Games are art. They should inspire, not exhaust you. And if you realize today that you are tired of endless matches and angry teammates, it is not a defeat. It's your personal victory over the cycle. So pause and pick a game that gives you not just a rink, but a real experience.